The afternoon sun blazed hot over the cracked pavement of Jefferson High's playground, where clusters of students lingered, their laughter and chatter bouncing between the walls. Among them was an 11-year-old boy named Caleb, small for his age, carrying a backpack that seemed almost too heavy for his thin shoulders. His wide brown eyes glanced nervously around, his steps quickening as he moved toward the far corner of the lot where he usually waited for his sister after class. Caleb wasn't just any student. He was the younger brother of Aaliyah, a quiet but strong presence in the school, someone who carried herself with calmness that most people misread as shyness. What they didn't know was that behind her calm demeanor was a discipline and fire that had been forged through years of training in martial arts, a craft she had inherited from her late father. But Caleb wasn't like his sister. He was sweet, trusting, and timid, and to a certain group of boys who had spent the past year looking for easy targets, he was the perfect victim. This particular afternoon, the air grew heavy as those boys, 3 of them taller and older, filled with the false confidence that comes from cruelty, noticed Caleb heading toward the fence. One of them, Marcus, the tallest, grinned and nudged his friend Jamal. "There's the baby brother," he sneered. "Bet he cries today too." The third, Dylan, cracked his knuckles and laughed. Caleb tried not to hear them, but his pace faltered. He could feel their eyes boring into his back, his heartbeat quickening. His sister always told him to stand tall, to breathe deep, to never let fear control him. But he was 11, and fear had a way of squeezing his chest and freezing his feet. He tightened his grip on his backpack straps and whispered to himself, "Aaliyah's coming. Just wait till Aaliyah gets here." But Aaliyah wasn't here yet. The boys closed in, surrounding him near the fence where no teachers were around. Marcus shoved Caleb's shoulder, sending him stumbling sideways. "Where you running off to, huh?" Marcus taunted. Jamal yanked the backpack from his shoulders, unzipping it and dumping books onto the concrete. Pages scattered. Notebooks slid through dirt. Caleb scrambled to pick them up, his small hands shaking. Dylan kicked one of the notebooks across the lot, laughing cruelly. "Pick it up, little man. Or maybe you want me to write a lesson on your face instead." Caleb's throat tightened. He wanted to shout, to tell them to leave him alone, but his voice caught. He thought of his father's words, the ones Aaliyah often repeated. "Courage isn't about not being afraid, Caleb. It's about doing the right thing even while you're scared." But right now, he couldn't find that courage. His hands were trembling as he reached for his math book, only for Marcus to stump on it, the sole of his sneaker grinding it into the concrete. Caleb looked up at him, his eyes watering. "Please," Caleb whispered. "That's my homework." "Please," Marcus mocked, twisting his mouth into a cruel smile. "Hear that? The baby's begging." Jamal laughed and shoved Caleb again, harder this time, making him fall on his knees. Gravel scraped against his skin, a thin line of blood appearing on his leg. The pain stung, but it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the laughter. The way they looked at him, as though he was nothing, as though hurting him was just another game. Caleb's chest tightened with humiliation, tears threatening to spill. He bit his lip hard, remembering how his sister always told him, "Don't cry for them. Never give them what they want." But the tears were burning hot, and then, as if summoned by the very strength Caleb was trying to find, a shadow stretched across the pavement. Aaliyah, 16 years old, tall and graceful, with skin glowing deep brown in the sun and braided hair tied back so it wouldn't fall in her face. She wore her usual jeans and hoodie, simple clothes that hid the athletic build underneath. But her eyes, sharp, piercing, steady, locked onto the scene in front of her, and for a moment, the bullies froze. They hadn't expected her to arrive so soon. Aaliyah didn't shout. She didn't rush. She simply walked forward, her footsteps deliberate, her expression unreadable. She crouched down beside her brother first, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "You okay, Caleb?" she asked softly, ignoring the boys as though they weren't even worth her attention. Caleb sniffled and nodded, though his eyes flicked toward Marcus's foot, still pressing on his book. That was when Aaliyah finally looked up. Her gaze shifted to Marcus, then Jamal, then Dylan, calm, controlled. "Dangerous? Move your foot," she said quietly. Marcus laughed, though his voice cracked slightly under the weight of her stare. "Or what? You think you scare me? You're just his sister. Stay out of it." Aaliyah stood slowly, her height nearly matching his. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "I said, move your foot." The playground seemed to hold its breath. A few students nearby had noticed what was happening and lingered, curious. The bullies thrived on attention, but something about Aaliyah's calm presence unsettled them. Jamal muttered, "Man, let's just go." But Marcus, too stubborn to back down, sneered and shoved Caleb's book away with his foot. "What are you going to do about it?" Caleb's heart sank. He wanted to scream for his sister not to fight, not to make it worse. But Aaliyah didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her movements fluid, her body language so relaxed it was unnerving. And then in a blink, she shifted, her hand snapping out, gripping Marcus's wrist before he even realized she had moved. The sound of his gasp echoed. In a smooth, practiced motion, she twisted his arm just enough to make his knees buckle, forcing him down slightly without breaking a bone. He cried out in pain, eyes widening. "You don't touch my brother," Aaliyah said firmly, her voice low but carrying. Jamal stepped forward in shock, but Aaliyah released Marcus and shifted her stance, feet planted, shoulders squared, her hands slightly raised. Every inch of her body radiated control, balance, and lethal precision. Those who had seen her fight before knew. Those who hadn't were about to learn. Caleb's tears had stopped. He watched his sister with awe, with relief, with a swell of pride so strong it pushed the fear away. The bullies had no idea what they had walked into. They thought they were picking on an easy target. They didn't know Aaliyah had spent years mastering styles her father had taught her. Karate, taekwondo, judo, a mix of techniques sharpened through relentless practice. She wasn't just good, she was exceptional. The tension on the playground thickened. Students whispered, eyes wide, phones slowly lifting to record. Aaliyah didn't care. Her only focus was on Caleb and the boys who dared to hurt him. She gave them one last chance, her voice like steel. Pick up his books, apologize, and walk away. But Marcus, pride stinging worse than his wrist, spat on the ground and snarled, "You think you're tough? You're gonna regret that." And with those words, the storm was about to break.